You know what I love? Psychological manipulation. I mean, why else would my girlfriend watch Breaking Bad with me? As you can imagine though, the spy from Team Fortress 2 has a lot of ways of achieving this psychological manipulation. One of my favorites being disguises. Usually disguises make you appear as if you were on the enemy team, and that in its own can lead to some pretty clever kills. The disguise kit also has a different lesser known functionality though. The ability to disguise as your own teammates. Yeah, so what, I can already hear some of you typing. And well, we're going to be talking about that today. While friendly disguises seem pretty useless on paper, they can actually have a surprising amount of depth and use cases when you take into account the fabled psychological manipulation I've mentioned. So to highlight their use cases, I've made a couple different categories of times you'll want to consider using friendly disguises, followed by a tier list of how good each disguise is when considering these prerequisites. I know a lot of you guys wanted me to talk about friendly disguises in the disguise tier list video, but I felt that friendly disguises were too hard to rate and directly compare to the normal disguises due to the fact that they play a much more supportive role. So I decided to make this one its own separate video. And again, a quick disclaimer. Most of my experience comes from competitive TF2, and while a lot of these may still be effective and casual, I think it's more interesting to use competitive as a base. With all that out of the way, let's get into how to gaslight your loved one. When do you want to use friendly disguises? Well, as I've said, I've made a couple of categories to differentiate your options, and they are Intimidation and Misdirection. I think these two categories capture just about every aspect of friendly disguises there is. So let's go ahead and start with Intimidation. In situations where a spy may not be very threatening, like if you're capping a point or even just alone, throwing on a disguise of just about any other class can make people hesitate before they rush you down. A lot of times being the difference between capping a point or dying. Classes I like to use for this are Heavy and Soldier, though I do like to mix in Pyro, Demo, and sometimes Scout from time to time. The only problem with mixing them in though is they're much more susceptible to being blindly rushed down due to their more obvious weaknesses. This kind of thing can also be great if you're protecting your medic. In situations where the medic is alone, it doesn't hurt to disguise as a big bad defense class in order to drive their teammates away. And in the situation where they go for your med anyway, while inconsistent, it gives you an opportunity to backstab them in some situations where they ignore you and rush your med. I don't recommend going for this consistently, but it is something that could happen. Another thing you could be using for big scary disguises are things like covering for your teammates when they're out of position. Like if your Pyro or Soldier is being aggressive, then you can act as a sort of body double to make them think you still have a defense. This can be a similar case with NG in some situations, but I don't see it being as effective as consistently. I think you guys get the gist on Intimidation now though, so let's get into Misdirection. Misdirection is my favorite genre of friendly disguises, because it's the most directly impactful in a competitive setting, and it really brings out the mind games I like with Spy. Some friendly disguise plays are even starting to become fairly common in competitive. A Misdirection play is disguising as a high value or important class and appearing in a position opposite or unexpected by the enemy team. Examples of this would be disguising as your sniper in an opposite sightline so that your sniper can get a better opening, or even dead ringing as a sniper to make the enemy think he's dead. Doing the same thing as medic to bait bombs for you, throw off where the enemy thinks your combo is, and maybe even calling voice lines through a wall to throw them off as well. You can also do this with a class like Demo, since in a competitive setting, he's at the core of the team, and the rest of the combo, Heavy, Medic, and Pyro will follow where he goes. This can bait pushes and force the enemy to adapt to something that might not even happen. All of these are fairly low risk options and can be quite good support for your team along with helping create openings. Another subsect of this category of mind manipulation would be fake flanks. Appearing as an engineer or any other flank or even combo member in an enemy territory before disappearing. You don't even need to stick around for very long, but as long as someone sees you before you disappear around a corner, that can be more than enough to waste their team's time. Especially in competitive, teams can't really afford to miss something like that unless they want to run the risk of getting flanked for free. This costs almost nothing on your end as well if you get good at it. Sure, there could be times where you get rushed down by a scout, but if you do it in moderation and with good timing, it could take pressure off the front lines and even make it easier for your team to flank if they start catching on more. Now that the more general uses of friendly disguises are out there, I'll do a quick run through of each disguise in a tier list format. This will include when to use them, which category they fall into, to give you all a more in-depth understanding of the role of these disguises. Scout, very situational. He's not a bad friendly disguise per se, I just really only use him for finishing caps. Which he's not bad at, to be fair. That situation just won't come up often, and he doesn't fill the role of Intimidation or Misdirection super well. Scout isn't the most intimidating class in a fight, and he's not the most important class either. The one area where I find him useful in these categories though is in fake flanks. He's pretty easy to appear and disappear with around corners, and can definitely waste time. Generally though, if you go for this play, you want to really be an eye-catching, threatening class. And it can be very map dependent as well. So the Scout disguise isn't bad, it just could be better. A lot of other friendly disguises do what he does better, given the situations. Soldier, situational mix-up. kinda does what the friendly scout disguise does, but better honestly. You're no longer a sad tiny baby man, now you have a rocket launcher. No one with a brain fucks with a guy with a rocket launcher. Sure, you can't hide behind the cart as well if you're going for a cap, but less people will brainlessly rush you down and there will definitely be more hesitation. This makes it pretty good at protecting your med and holding ground if your soldiers flanking elsewhere are dead. This disguise also does fake flanks pretty well because no one's gonna let a soldier run amok behind them. Still gonna put him kinda low because you won't be making any game-changing plays with him, but he's one of the better intimidation-based disguises. Pyro, situational mix-up. Pretty similar to the friendly soldier disguise, but more dependent on who you're fighting. Pyro is much less threatening from a range, especially to hit scan classes. But if your pyros out of position are dead, it can be strong to fake the pyro disguise to deter bombers. You can also use this to let your pyro mains out of medic jail for a bit if you think they've earned it. They deserve to flank and die every now and then too. And if your disguise doesn't work and your medic dies anyway, then just blame your pyro. Who says you only have to gaslight your enemies? But yeah, all in all, not much different from the other intimidation-based disguises. The speed and more perceived bomb denial is nice in defensive scenarios though, so use at your own discretion. Demo, strong mix-up. Friendly demo disguise would probably be a tier lower if it wasn't for the role he plays in competitive. He's the core of the team and the biggest damage source, which means that everything he does and everywhere he goes will have to be top priority for the enemy team to manage. If you appear in an opposite side of the map, they'll immediately have to respect it and assume that the rest of the team is with you. Even if they call out your bluff, all it takes is one person to think you're real and call you out. This will lead the enemy team to one of two conclusions. One of the demos isn't real and is a spy/miscall, or two, their teammate is schizophrenic and maybe delusional, both of which will clutter their voice chat and possibly start an argument that will kill their friendship and their team. You don't even need to stay in position for long. After someone sees you, you can kinda just dip and go for whatever else is on your spy itinerary. Yes, I just called it a spy itinerary. So all in all, demo, not much risk and pretty good reward if you trick them. He's just a pretty convincing disguise since you don't always gotta be shooting as well. Heavy, situational mix-up. Kinda a mix between soldier and pyro as a friendly disguise. Great intimidation factor and is good for deterring bomb/capping points. I'll just generally use heavy a lot to sit in the cap or if I'm with a medic for a long time and my actual heavy is off flanking. You can also pretend to flank pretty well with heavy, especially since there's a fair bit of competitive maps where the heavy will rotate a bit and flank a lot. So faking a heavy in flank is very scary. Only problem is heavy can't really pretend to rev, so you can't really be in line of sight for long without giving yourself away. That paired with the slower move speed tanks the heavy's ranking a bit. He's a pretty good intimidation pick though, so feel free to use him here and there. Engineer, very situational. Long story short, friendly scout disguise but worse. Engineer just isn't really great at intimidation or misdirection. His best gimmick comes from pretending to have an engineer and teleporter behind the enemy. This can waste a ton of enemy time if it works, because it left people walking aimlessly for nothing. And you can also switch friendly disguises for added paranoia. Only problem with this strategy is it can be pretty map dependent. Other than that, I can see this working pretty well though, as long as you don't overdo it. But yeah, I just don't really have a lot to say about the friendly engineer disguise. I'm sure there's more depth to it, but it's kind of difficult and not really great in my opinion. Medic, strong mix-up. Quite literally the most important class in the game, so it's no surprise that confusing the enemy and the location of the medic would be very strong. I tend to use this disguise to bait for people to bomb into me or attempt to pick me off instead of my actual medic. This pairs especially well with a dead ringer because if someone bombs onto you and dies, you can just dead ring away scot-free before moving your medic back into the fight. Appearing in alternate routes and calling voice lines is also very strong. Generally with the medic disguise though, it will take a lot more team coordination as opposed to just doing it when an opening comes up. When you actually coordinate with your team though, medic mix-ups can be insane and you can get massive mileage off of it. Sniper. Huge big brain potential. The absolute best and easiest friendly disguise to use by far. The amount of mileage you can get from this disguise from essentially doing nothing is insane. The amount of fear Sniper sets into your soul just from seeing him across the map is enough to make people start Scooby-Doo running out of the sightline immediately. I mean, just look at this. This is a pug with some comp friends and they're avoiding my sightline like the plague even though I'm not even a real sniper. And I never really had to put myself in any real harm. You can also just appear in a different sightline to force the enemy to respect you, and possibly even force them into your own sniper sightline. This forces the enemy sniper to guess which sniper is real or even engage in an SVS with a spy, leaving your sniper wide open to take a shot. The sniper disguise is just so good at every aspect of friendly disguises for little to no risk on your own end. So on the contrary to every other disguise and friendly disguise in the game, feel free to spam this one. It only creates confusion and they have to respect it unless they want to gamble their heads. Sure, you can't scope, but most people won't notice from far away. And you could also just have your own sniper scope less to add even more confusion for longer. Well, there you have it. The final official Friendly Disguise tier list CyberWizard approved. Now obviously a lot of this list is very opinionated, and Friendly Disguises are not very well explored yet. So I encourage all of you guys to go and do some more Friendly Disguise exploration and experimentation, just to see how far we can push Friendly Disguises as a whole. Right now in competitive, the only real disguises that are used for mix-ups are Sniper mainly, and then occasionally a Medic disguise. All in all, Friendly Disguises aren't used very often, and are maybe used once or twice on an invite team per season. So I'd definitely like to see more of them. One more thing before ending the video, I'd like to give a shout out to Binkus, who's been making some pretty awesome art for me, especially these two pieces that he made for me and my girlfriend. So very funny and very cool. Go ahead and follow him on Twitter at Binkus3rd. And thank you guys for watching. Here's some fan art before we... What? Who are you people? What flight? What hot sauce? What are you talking about? Hey!